How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Mass Effect. Today, you may have noticed that I marked this episode with a bracketed C down in the title there. The reason for that is because today we are not doing anything plot-related. We're actually just going to be talking to our crew and looking at the Codex entries that we have available. Now, I think I explained at the end of the last episode that this was what I was going to do with all of the Codex entries. I was going to bracket them off basically to their own separate episode, and I figured, why make it bland and boring? I can also use that time to talk to the crew members, see if they have anything to say on the last mission that we did and anything like that. So we're going to start that up today because there's plenty of Codex entries to go through, and I have a few crew members that I can talk to before we go and actually advance the plot by talking to Joker. But first, do we need any more, Joe? No, we don't, but we get a Codex entry for it, so we should probably be careful of that. But yeah, first step I'm going to take is talking to all the crew members, and we will start with Lieutenant Alenko, or Kaidan, as he is now being known in terms of like what our heads-up display says about him. Kaidan.
Commander, I'm glad to see you're okay. Losing Jenkins was hard on the crew, and I'm glad we didn't lose you too.
Oh, yeah, I mean, losing Jenkins was tough, but you can't forget that there was another soldier on board with me, aside from Jenkins and Williams. You have to think about yourself a little bit, too.
Things were pretty rough down there.
Yeah, you never get used to seeing dead civilians. Doesn't seem right somehow. But at least you stopped Saren from wiping out the whole colony.
Well, like I said, man, it wasn't just me. That you were there.
I couldn't have done it without you.
We're Marines. We stick together. And I'm just sorry that we lost Jenkins.
Yeah. I understand the feeling completely. I'm not a fan of soldiers dying under my command, as I'm sure the captain has probably told you once or twice before.
Yeah, I wish I could have done something to save him.
I was there. You did everything right. It was just bad luck.
Well, to be frank, he didn't go to cover, like I said, so it wasn't really bad luck.
First mission ends with one Spectre killing another. The Citadel Council's not going to be happy about that. Probably use it to lever more concessions out of the Alliance.
You think that's how it's all gonna go? I mean, you seem to have a pretty good grasp on the political situation here.
You've got a good grasp of the situation. You a career man?
Yeah, a lot of biotics are. We're not restricted, but we sure don't go undocumented. May as well get a paycheck for it.
Besides, my father served. I made him proud when I enlisted. Eventually. But is that why you're here? Because of your family?
No, not exactly.
I never met my parents. If they wanted to see me, they'd have contacted me after that mess a few years back.
Oh, that's right, a Coos.
I imagine that bought you any post in the fleet.
Didn't mean I wanted it, though.
We're heading for the Citadel, ma'am. Can you, tell me why?
Well, I figured, since he has a good grasp on the whole situation here, he probably deserves to know why exactly we're heading to the Citadel, so I feel like it's justified in telling him.
The captain hopes the ambassador can get an audience with the council. Tell them what Saren's been up to.
Makes sense. They'd probably like to know he's not working for them anymore.
If we can even prove
Whatever
that.
happens, we'll be ready, Commander.
Good to know, Lieutenant. I'm sure they'll keep us on our toes, considering how unhappy the captain seemed to be about going and talking to them, because we don't really have a story. Oh, somebody put something in my locker. 2 assault rifles, neither of which I can really use to any great effect ever. Thanks, random person, whom I don't know who it is, but thanks, I guess. Anyway, Dr. Chakwas.
Yes, Commander? Is there something you need?
Not terribly much, but you'll have to forgive me. I've only been on this ship for a couple of weeks, and we've already got this whole mess going on, but I'm going to use you as my little bird, I guess, to kind of give me an idea of what is going on this whole ship. But first, I mean, let's start with you. Let's get to know you a little bit better.
How did you end up serving on an Alliance ship?
I enlisted right out of med school. Earth always seemed boring to me. Too safe, too secure.
Well, you haven't been to the cities,
the
then.
colonies were teeming with exotic adventure. I wanted to travel the stars, tending the wounds of tough soldiers with piercing eyes and sensitive souls. Turns out military life isn't quite as romantic as I'd imagined. But humanity needs the Alliance if we want to keep expanding through the Traverse, and the Alliance always needs good doctors. so I stayed on to do my part.
And we appreciate your service, of course, but, I mean, if you felt it was secure and safe on Earth, that means you probably grew up in a relatively well-off family, and you didn't have to live in the inner cities, so if you were in such a good position, you know, why leave?
Ever think you made the wrong choice?
Sometimes I think about opening a private practice back on Earth, or maybe taking a position at one of the new med centers out in the colonies. But there's something special about working on soldiers. If I left the Alliance now, I'd feel like I was abandoning them.
Okay, yeah, I understand that situation. It's kind of how I felt with the kids that I used to work with back on Earth, but that's a story for another time. I'll tell you over drinks sometime or something. I know the captain fairly well, but I haven't worked with him too much before this mission. Have you worked with him previously?
What do you know about Captain Anderson?
I've served with him for a few tours now. He knows when to let things slide and when to crack the whip. The crew knows he's seen pretty much anything they'll ever run into. And he cares about the people under his command.
Yeah, he seemed that way. He's kind of like me in a manner of speaking, although he's far more experienced in the field than Shepard is at this point, but you know. Now I guess the question comes down to Lieutenant Alenko. I've never served with him before this. Do you have any knowledge on him?
How well do you know the lieutenant?
I'd never worked with him before this mission, but he has an impressive service record, over a dozen special commendations. Tends to keep to himself, though. Maybe because of the headaches. It's not easy being an L2.
An L2? I mean, I know what an L2 is, but what does being an L2 have to do with, you know, being relatively introverted?
What does that have to do with it?
Well, most biotics now use the L3 implants.
Right, I do too.
Lieutenant Alenko was wired with the old L2 configuration. Sometimes there are complications.
Like?
What kind of complications?
Severe mental disabilities, insanity, crippling physical pain.
Oh my god.
There's a long list of horrific side effects. Kaidan's lucky. He just gets migraines.
Yeah, I guess that's good. I can't even imagine dealing with that. They never told me about that with the L2s. It's probably why they didn't want me to get them, because they saw how dangerous they were. Well, I guess they were looking out for me on that part. But I'm guessing that's why you're here then, is partially because you have to keep an eye on Kaidan in case the L2s decide to flare up and, you know, cause him some more physical pain. You're there to help him out, so I guess that makes sense. Well, thanks for your service, Doctor. We'll be sure to check in with you if we ever need Metagel or anything else.
I should go.
Goodbye, Commander.
Goodbye. Chief Williams, you're the next one on my list to talk to. How you holding up?
I'm glad you're okay, Commander. The crew could use some good news after what happened to Jenkins.
Yeah, like I said to Lieutenant Alenko over there, I'm not a fan of him dying under my command, and he was a good soldier, so.
Jenkins was a valuable part of this crew.
Part of me feels guilty over what happened. If Jenkins was still alive, I might not be here.
You can't think that way, Chief. I mean, if he was still alive, you'd certainly be alive right now, but, you know, you're just as deserving of this post as he is, I think.
You're a good soldier, Williams. You belong on the Normandy.
Thanks, Commander. I appreciate that.
Well, just doing my job. You know, gotta keep morale up and all that stuff. Speaking of morale...
Things were pretty rough down there. Are you okay?
I've seen friends die before. Comes with being a Marine. But to see my whole unit wiped out, and you never get used to seeing dead civilians. But things would have been a lot worse if you hadn't shown up.
Well, again, like I said to Lieutenant Alenko, it wasn't just me down there, it was all of us.
We couldn't have done it without you, Williams.
Thanks, Commander. I have to admit, I was a little worried about being assigned to the Normandy. It's nice when someone makes you feel welcome.
I wonder why she was worried. But like I said, I mean, I'm just doing my job, you know? It's no big deal.
I think you're gonna fit in here just fine, Williams.
Thanks, Commander.
Not a problem. Is there anything to look at over here in the gun battery? Sometimes there's Codex entries that are kind of buried in the Normandy's various compartments that you can get if you wander around enough, but I don't think there's one here right now. That's the Doctor, Kaidan, Ashley. Captain Anderson's in here, although I don't think there's anything else in here to do, and he just tells us to go talk to Joker, I think.
Go speak to Joker when you're ready. Tell him to bring the Normandy into dock.
Yep. Well, we kind of have to get there first, sir, but, aye aye. We won't actually be talking to Joker today because, like I said, we're just doing crew member talk and Codex entries today. So that's what we're going to focus on now. And I think we only have to talk to Navigator Presley now, and then we're all set. I think there's, yeah, Nav Manual 141 here. Another Codex entry. Is there anything down the hall? Just Joker. Alright, let's, actually, I don't think I've ever checked this. Does this give me a Codex entry if I look at this now, or does this just tell me that I can't use it for now? Yeah. Only the person who is in command of the ship can use the galaxy map. So the captain has to be the one to use the galaxy map in order to give orders. I don't know what happens if we were in a situation where he wasn't here and we had to leave. Like, if he told us to get out of here, does that mean that we override the code? Or, like, how does that work? I'd like to know that.
I'm glad you're okay, Commander. Losing Jenkins was hard enough on the crew.
Yeah, I've heard, and I know he'll be missed, but he wouldn't have wanted us to be moping around about it. He'd want us to be taking the fight to the people who did this to him, and the people who did this to him, as far as we know, are the Geth and Saren, so we will have to take the fight to them. Oh, comlink. Let's take a look at that. I think this is just what we'd use to talk to the Alliance R&D, or rather, the Alliance, just in general. We would communicate with them this way. Also, since the comm room is empty, this is going to be the room that we will probably be using for basically all of the Codex entries in the entire game. So get used to seeing this room, because on the days when we're taking it easy and just reading, we'll probably be in here. So, just so you know, that's how I'm planning on doing this. Did I equip everything that I needed to equip before? Okay, I didn't equip the Scorpion yet. I'm gonna equip that stuff first. I don't think I equipped Kaidan or Ashley with their new stuff either. We definitely don't need 2 of these Reapers, but I don't remember if I equipped Ashley with that stuff. Is it just the cryo explosives here? Yeah, I'm gonna melt one of those down. I don't like cryo explosives. They reduce the accuracy on grenades, which doesn't make any sense, really, because how does an explosive, you know, that has a blast radius, how does that become less accurate? Does it, like, waver when you're throwing it? I don't know. I've never used the cryo, and I don't plan on it because it's not really anything that good. Nothing here, and here we go. Okay, so this is bad, and Kaidan is not going to be getting it, so I might as well just melt it down. This is what Ashley comes with. This is Turian armor, and it's bad, so I'm going to melt it down. Like I said, this is what Ashley comes with, so I think, yeah, I'm just going to melt that down. Because I can't wear it, and Kaidan can't wear it, and Ashley already has it, so, you know, whatever. But this is much better, so we will put the Scorpion on real quick. Transfer our upgrades, so now we have the health regen that was on Onyx 1 here, on Scorpion 1. And Scorpion 1 is probably what I'm going to have equipped for quite a while, because it's the best piece of armor that you can have at this point in the game, unless you do a certain mission with a lot of space debris, if you know what I mean. Maybe not, I might have been being too vague there. I'm going to convert this too, and, well, we've got a Banshee 2. Do I really need all these Banshee 1s, then? I don't need one of them. Let's see here. One of those is going to Williams. I'll think about it later. We'll worry about that in a little while. But for now, we've done all the crew stuff, so let's get on to these Codex entries. Actually, let me check the journal real quick. We have Find the Beacon. We just need to speak to Joker. The Codex is basically your collection of data that you get over the course of the game in case you want to know more about the in-game universe, and it's very thorough. The developers thought of pretty much everything, so we'll be taking a look at that, and we'll be doing all of that in this episode. And there is a lot to go through. As you can plainly see here, we have quite a few tabs to go through, and there's also these primary ones. Now, the primary ones are read to us by a narrator, so I don't have to worry about reading those. And I'm actually going to start with those because I need to take a drink of water because my S's are already going shh, you know, making that disgusting noise. So let's start with Aliens Council Races, and narrator, if you please, take it away.
Roughly 1,200 years ago, the Turians were invited to join the Citadel Council to fulfill the role of galactic peacekeepers. The Turians have the largest fleet in Citadel space, and they make up the single largest portion of the Council's military forces. As their territory and influence has spread, the Turians have come to rely on the Solarians for military intelligence and the Asari for diplomacy. Despite a somewhat colonial attitude towards the rest of the galaxy, the ruling hierarchy understands they would lose more than they would gain if the other two races were ever removed. Turians come from an autocratic society that values discipline and possesses a strong sense of personal and collective honor. There is lingering animosity between Turians and humans over the First Contact War of 2157, which is known as the Relay 314 incident to the Turians. Officially, however, the two species are allies, and they enjoy civil, if cool, diplomatic relations.
I think we can all agree that that is a good thing, because being wiped off the face of the galaxy map by the Turians probably wouldn't have done humans very much good. But we'll get into that later. The Turians possess a strong sense of discipline. They're very honorable. We'll have to keep that in mind, because I'm sure we'll be working with more than just Nihilus on this whole journey, if you know what I mean. Because, you know, Nihilus kind of can't work with us anymore, although I meant more than just that. But this is just the profile again. We've already read that. Citadel and Galactic Government. What do we have here? Okay. I think we're going to have the narrator read the stuff about the Citadel and Galactic Government before we go to the secondary tab and read about the Citadel and Galactic Government. I'm going to try to keep the tabs that are the same being read at relatively the same time, because usually they flow well into one another, and I'll start with primary and then go over to secondary. So that's just how I'm thinking we'll do this. So what do we have here? We've got Citadel and Galactic Government, we've got Humanity and the Systems Alliance, ships and vehicles. Do we have anything on ships and vehicles? No. We have a thing on technology. We have weapons, armor, and equipment. Okay, so the narrator's going to read for a little while longer, because we still have all these aliens ones to go through before we can get into the rest of this. So let's start with extinct races. Let's try that.
50,000 years ago, the Protheans were the only spacefaring species in the galaxy. They vanished in a swift galactic extinction. Only the legacy of their empire remains. They are believed to have built the mass relays and the Citadel, which have allowed numerous species to explore and expand throughout the galaxy. Prothean ruins are found on worlds across the galaxy. While surprisingly intact for their age, functioning examples of Prothean paleotechnology are rare. Time and generations of looters have picked their dead cities and derelict stations clean. Some believe the Protheans meddled in the evolution of younger races. The Hanar homeworld of Kajay, for example, shows clear evidence of former Prothean occupation. The presence of a former Prothean observation post on Mars has caused a rebirth of interventionary evolutionists among humans. These individuals believe the god myths of ancient civilizations are misremembered encounters with aliens.
And from a real-life perspective, I can't say that... I mean, considering we have kind of hard physical evidence that they were on Mars, I guess I can't say I blame them for having these evolutionists, but would anyone really treat them with any kind of respect, given the fact that nowadays in real life they, you know, speak so freely of it and everyone looks at them and they're like, you're insane. You're putting pieces together that don't belong together, you're making illusory correlations and pulling at, you know, grasping at straws. But, I mean, with the Protheans being on Mars, I suppose it kind of makes sense a little bit. And this is why I was saying, you know, I was so surprised when the captain was talking about how they found a Prothean beacon, because functioning examples, like examples that are active, like the beacon was, are relatively rare. So that's important to remember. They talk about it being a swift galactic extinction. Remember that because how can I explain this without giving it away? It's swift on a galactic scale, not on a human scale. If you understand what that means, then good. If you don't worry about it. We'll get into it later. But non-council races, so who's going to be in that one? Well, humans we might get an entry on, although we kind of know most of what there is to know about humans already, so probably somebody else. Yeah, the Geth.
The Geth are a humanoid race of networked AIs. They were created by the Quarians 300 years ago as tools of labor and war. When the Geth showed signs of self-evolution, the Quarians attempted to exterminate them. The Geth won the resulting war. This example has led to legal, systematic repression of artificial intelligences in galactic society. The Geth possess a unique distributed intelligence. An individual has rudimentary animal instincts, but as their numbers and proximity increase, the apparent intelligence of each individual improves. In groups, they can reason, analyze situations, and use tactics, as well as any organic race. Geth space is located at the trailing end of the Perseus Arm, beyond the lawless Terminus systems. The Perseus Veil, an obscuring dark nebula of opaque gas and dust, lies between their space and the Terminus systems.
You would have gotten more information on this from Chief Williams if you had interrogated her after we rescued her, and she would have said, I think they're Geth. And then if you would have asked her about what the Geth are, if she had any more information, she'd say, just what we learned in school. The Geth were created by the Quarians, and then they rebelled, and then they the Quarians started a war, and then they lost it, and now the Geth were out in the Perseus Veil, but apparently not anymore because now they're here, so... but I find this Codex entry kind of vague, but I can't really get into why yet. We'll get into it probably later in the series, to be honest with you. But maybe we'll have to ask Quarians, a Quarian at the very least, about how the war went. It'd be good to have both sides of this equation, and seeing as how the Geth are kind of not talking to us because they'd rather shoot at us, something tells me this is kind of the story here that we need to know. But they have a collective consciousness, and that's kind of cool. It's an interesting technological development. The way that they think, anyway. It improves with groups, which makes sense because our thinking improves in groups because we have multiple perspectives on a situation, but they actually have more intelligence in groups. Like, they electronically, would have more intelligence in a group than they would by themselves. I'm not sure how the Quarians manage that one, but good on them, because that's quite an accomplishment, even though it's kind of outlawed at this point, Anyway, let's move on to non-sapient creatures.
After the Geth secure a location, they round up and impale dead and living bodies on mechanical spikes. The spikes rapidly transform these victims into withered husks, extracting water and trace minerals, and replacing them with cybernetics. The cybernetics reanimate the lifeless flesh and tissue, transforming the bodies into mindless killing machines. Some Alliance soldiers refer to the husk-generating spikes as dragon's teeth, a reference to the mythological berserkers who sprang up from the earth wherever the teeth of the dragon Eris were planted. Dragon's teeth and husks bear little resemblance to other pieces of Geth technology. No one is sure why a synthetic race would bother to drain the minuscule amount of recoverable resources from organic corpses, though the value of reusing them as shock troops is obvious.
Yeah, I think that's the primary reason why they use them as shock troops. I wonder if do they ever explain why they take the organic material out of them? I think they do indirectly, but we don't know anything about that yet. But they kill people, they impale them on those spikes, and then they basically, wherever their bloodstreams would have been, from what I understand, wherever blood would have flowed, it gets replaced with cybernetics, and then they turn into these things. Really, at this point, the question is why? Why would a synthetic race with so much intelligence that they're capable of taking on an organic race in a tactics-based survival situation relatively evenly, why would they create something like this? Do they feel like their numbers aren't enough? Can they make more of themselves, or can they not? And if they can't, I guess it makes sense, because then they would use these guys instead if they need to assess how powerful an enemy is, because these things are already dead. But just why, man? Why would you do this to people? Something tells me we're not going to get an answer anytime soon, especially not out of the Geth, but we'll get into more of that later, why that is. So we have Citadel and Galactic Government, and Citadel and Galactic Government. So we'll start with the primary and move to the secondary, like I said.
The Citadel is an ancient deep space station, presumably constructed by the Protheans. Since the Prothean extinction, numerous species have come to call the Citadel home. It serves as the political, cultural, and financial capital of the galactic community. To represent their interests, most species maintain embassies on the Presidium, the Citadel's inner ring. The Citadel Tower in the center of the Presidium holds the Citadel Council chambers. Council affairs often have far-reaching effects on the rest of the galactic community. 5 arms, known as the wards, extend from the Presidium. Their inner surfaces have been built into cities, populated by millions of inhabitants from across the galaxy. The Citadel is virtually indestructible. If attacked, the station can close its arms to form a solid, impregnable shell. For as long as the station has existed, an enigmatic race called the Keepers has maintained it.
Wow. We'll have to ask about the Keepers when we first get there, because Shepard has never actually visited the Citadel before, but virtually indestructible. I find that kind of hard to believe, seeing as how, even if it closes into a shell, couldn't you just fire at the Citadel Tower? Or am I missing something? Do the arms close over top of the tower? Maybe they do. Maybe that little hinge on the side, like, you can kind of see the arms extend past those little attachments that are keeping it attached to the Presidium, the ring there. Maybe the arms extend behind that, and then when it closes, it kind of forms like a cone over top of it, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'd have to look at it again. But there's people living on those arms there. We'll get more information out of the secondary entries, I think. There might be more than one, about how this whole thing works, but that's more technical stuff. Basically, all you need to know is that the whole galactic community has its hub areas at the Citadel, and that's, this is where most of the commerce happens. This is where most of the hustle and bustle, quote-unquote, of the galaxy occurs, is right here on the Citadel, or around it, in the ships that are probably floating around it.
Spectres are agents from the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance, and answer only to the Citadel Council. They are elite military operatives, granted the authority to deal with threats to peace and stability in whatever way they deem necessary. They operate independently or in groups of 2 or 3. Some are empathetic peacekeepers, resolving disputes through diplomacy. Others are cold-blooded assassins, ruthlessly dispatching problem individuals. All get the job done one way or another, often operating outside the bounds of galactic law. The Spectres were founded after the Solarians joined the Council. For many years they operated in secrecy as backroom problem solvers. Only after the Krogan rebellions did their activities become publicized. Assignment of a Spectre is less contentious than a military deployment, but makes it clear that the Council is concerned about a situation.
And that's if the Spectre is public enough to let people know that they're going to someplace. Although, I suppose if their activities are now publicized, it would become easier to spot them, but I don't know. It depends. But they're a Black Ops unit that works only for the Citadel Council, except for Saren, apparently, who has gone rogue. I don't know how we're going to deal with that, but I guess we'll have to let Captain Anderson give us some ideas when we get when we get to the Citadel. I can't really say back to, because we haven't been there before, but anyway, let's read the secondary tab about the Citadel and galactic government now. Okay, they're just going to give us the stats about it. I'll read these aloud, the parts that I think are important anyway. Although the Citadel is equipped with Mass Effect-generating Element Zero cores, which can, on their own, create a gravitational pull, most of the gravity on the station is generated by the centrifugal force of rotation. So the ring rotates, the wards rotate, and it creates gravity just by the rotation. So, now I'm not sure what they mean by... 3.5 minutes per revolution. Well, what's the revolution time? Does it tell me that? I don't think it does. Well, but anyway, the statistics here are... they're there, but I'm not 100% sure exactly how it works still, even though I know that it, it turns. I'm guessing... yeah, I can't really make heads or tails of how this would work exactly. Maybe you guys can explain it to me in the comments so I can get a better concept of how exactly the rotation works. But I know the ring turns, and that revolves everything around it, and that revolution creates the gravity that keeps everything from floating out into the nebula that the Citadel is in. So that's how that works. It's a huge space station, but by comparison to a planet, it is only about 45 kilometers long, which is, like I said, it's huge, but it's not a planet, and it still has 13.2 million inhabitants, not including the Keepers. And the Keepers probably make up a lot more because they have to keep this place running, so. It's a small place on a planetary scale, but it holds a lot of people, and it does a lot. There's a lot going on there, so it gives you an idea of what kind of place it is. Humanity and the Systems Alliance. Let's look at how we've handled ourselves galactically once we were able to leave the confines of our solar system.
Humanity's first contact with an alien race occurred in 2157. At that time, the Alliance allowed survey fleets to activate any dormant mass relays discovered, a practice considered dangerous and irresponsible by Council-aligned races. When a Turian patrol discovered a human fleet attempting to activate a relay, they attacked. One human vessel survived, retreating to the colony of Shanxi. The Turians followed, quickly defeating the local forces. Shanxi was occupied, the first and to date only human world to be conquered by an alien species. The Turians believed the handful of ships they defeated represented the bulk of human defenses, so they were unprepared when the Second Fleet, under Admiral Castany Drescher, launched a strong counteroffensive, evicting them from Shanxi. The Turians mobilized for full-scale war, drawing the attention of the rest of the galaxy. The Council quickly intervened, forcing a truce. Fortunately for humanity, the First Contact War was ended with a diplomatic solution.
And again, I think I speak for everyone involved by saying that that would have been a costly war, because it would have cost the Turians billions of credits in their mobilization efforts, and it probably would have cost humanity the bulk of the species. So I'm pretty sure everyone's glad that it ended in that way, unless they're, superhuman nationalist type people who really, think that humanity can do no wrong. I feel like Vanessa this kind of colored her perspective, even though she wasn't a part of this whole thing. It kind of colored her perspective on humanity's spreading throughout the galaxy, and then Aku's kind of sealed the deal for her in saying that she felt like they were spreading too quickly, and it would be better to kind of consolidate defenses in the colonies than just, go wherever they wanted at any, if they see a planet that they like, they can just go there and settle it. And the Council has intervened on that part, because they're forcing us to take more measures to prepare our colonies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're fully prepared. And, in case of a threat, like pirates from the Terminus systems coming to Eden Prime, or the Geth in this case, we need to be capable of defending ourselves. And I don't think Vanessa feels like that is something we can do at this point, especially after seeing what happened to Eden Prime after a small force of Geth on one ship were deployed and nearly destroyed the entire colony. So, that's her personal feelings on this. I might have to bring it up again in an actual episode, because not everybody's going to watch these Codex entries, but I don't know. We'll talk about it later. For now, we've heard a lot about the Alliance. Let's see what it actually is and how it came to be founded first, before we go any further with it and then get a little more confused.
The Systems Alliance is an independent supranational government representing the interests of humanity as a whole. The Alliance is responsible for the governance and defense of all extrasolar colonies and stations. The Alliance grew out of the various national space programs as a matter of practicality. Sol's planets had been explored and exploited through piecemeal national efforts. The expense of colonizing entire new solar systems could not be met by any one country. With humans knowing that alien contact was inevitable, there was enough political will to jointly fund an international effort. Still, the Alliance was often disregarded by those on Earth until the First Contact War. While the national governments dithered and bickered over who should lead the effort to liberate Shanxi, the Alliance fleet struck decisively. Post-war public approval gave the Alliance the credibility to establish its own parliament and become the galactic face of humanity.
So there are still national governments on Earth, but they have significantly less pull because they decided to turn the liberation of Shanxi into an economic effort rather than actually mobilizing and trying to do something about it, whereas the Alliance just took the fight straight to Shanxi, and they did it decisively. So now the Alliance kind of it's not really a planetary international government that just controls everything, but it's pretty close, especially if you don't actually live on Earth anymore. If you're out in the colonies, or if you're out anywhere but on Earth anymore, and still sometimes if you're on Earth, depending on what city you live in and where the Alliance has their bases, you are pretty much looking to the Alliance if you have a problem and you need it fixing. So, at least in terms of pirate gangs or colonies don't have enough resources or anything like that, you're looking to the Alliance to take care of that stuff for you. And obviously, Vanessa is a part of the Systems Alliance. She is part of their Special Ops unit. I think we get into that here in a second. I think they talk about the designations in one of these Codex entries here, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. There's military jargon here. It's not entirely useful. It's mostly stuff that you can look up yourself if you're unsure of what the word means. I guess we can go through them quickly. So ashore is when the crew is off the ship, but we are docked. Away, like anchors away, we're dislodging ourselves from whatever we're tethered to, like pulling up anchor, basically. II is the proper way. It's sort of like if you're a naval officer, you use II instead of saying yes sir or yes ma'am to properly acknowledge an order that you're being given, because that's what to acknowledge. And like it says there, it's to acknowledge an order. If they're asking you a personal question, you would still say yes sir or yes ma'am. So ASAP, ASAP, I'm sure everybody knows what that means, as soon as possible. Belay means to stop an order. The bridge is what we're kind of standing on at this point. It's where we navigate from on a spacecraft or on a regular ship. Most of these you can probably figure out if you've ever done any research on an actual naval ship before, so you can probably figure these out from there. The captain's mast, it is... You're not a judge of what is going on, but there are disciplinary proceedings, so daily routines that ensure, from my understanding anyway, they're daily routines that ensure that the crew is following orders and that sort of stuff, and you're not accusing anybody of everything, you're just doing the rounds, essentially. Combat Information Center, that one's a little important, it'll come up a couple of times. It's your command center. It's where the galaxy map is for us. That's where we get all of our information from. DC for damage control. That's pretty obvious. ECM, electronic countermeasures. That's fairly obvious as well. We'll talk about passive emissions and active jamming later when we get into some technology, but just keep that in mind for later. EVA, extravehicular activity. So most of the time when we're out exploring planets, we will be extravehicular because we'll be exploring on foot. So that's how that works. Flank, the side of a formation, the side of... like I was saying before in the mission on Eden Prime, you guys shoot at them, I'll flank them. And what I meant by that was that they would shoot from the front and give covering fire, and I would creep up on the side and then hit them from there. FNG, I've never heard that expression before. Freaking new guys, but it's probably the other F word. It doesn't come up in the game, don't worry about it. A lot of the things that they use here, a lot of the acronyms that they use here don't actually come up in the game, so I'm not really sure why they included this. Probably just in case somebody was playing and wasn't experienced with how military works. Damn it, I forgot to move the crickets. I'll have to move them into the a place where they're not heard for the next session. I just realized that they're probably getting picked up by the mic. Ah, crap. Well, anyway, ground side, I've said planet side before, but it's being on the surface of a planet. Whereas if you're in space, you're obviously in space, so you're not there. Helmsman, Joker is our helmsman. He pilots the spacecraft. He pilots the Normandy, so he is our helmsman. Radar is using, it's kind of like radar, except it uses more concentrated beams of light or lasers. We'll get more into radar in a little bit as well. And it can create an image because it is high resolution, whereas radar, you kind of just get dots on a map. Radar can kind of give you an idea of what is coming in a relatively high resolution image. So, shore party, whenever we're off the spacecraft, whenever we're off the Normandy, we're considered the shore party. So you'll hear that a couple of times. Silent running is basically when we have the stealth systems active. We're running silent. We are running in such a way that people can't detect us, and we'll get more into that when we get to technology, or I think it's in ships and vehicles actually, but we'll get more into that in a second. Have I said SITREP already? I think I have. It's an abbreviation for situation report. It's pretty easy to understand once you know what SITREP means. Spacer, if you had the Spacer background, they would have mentioned this a couple of times, but basically if you spent most of your life in space rather than on a planet, for any given period of time, you're considered a spacer. And then XO is the executive officer, the person who is second in command of, in this case, an Alliance warship. And so you do administrative and personnel stuff. You make sure that the crew is working together all right. It's kind of like doing the rounds, like I said previously. So I'm accounting for all of the things that Vanessa is accounting for, all the things that the crew was doing, making sure that the personnel are working together all right, making sure they aren't stressed out, and if they are, they can take measures to counteract that stress with the doctors that are on board, that sort of thing. So that's what we do.